Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our March webinar with the Kentucky Advising Academy. We are so glad that you are here to join us. If this is your first webinar with us, the Kentucky Advising Academy is an initiative of the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education, and we are thrilled that you are with us today. We hope that you get some great information that you can put to immediate use. As many of you all already know, my name is Mitzi Holland, and I'm the director of the Kentucky Advising Academy. And we have a great webinar planned for you today with lots of information. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Cheryl Brumley, one of our regional coordinators, who will update you with some general information before turning it over to our guest presenter, Ms. Heather Bushelman.
Right. Hello, everyone. As people are joining in, we would like to know about you. So please, in our chat, if you could introduce ourselves and your organization, as well as your title. And of course, for our fun little question of the day, we'd like to know, do you have any fun spring break plans? I don't. I'll just be taking the time to chill out, but I can live vicariously through some of our participants today if anybody's going somewhere fun for their spring break. Even though it's cold today, the warm weather is coming. Some people in there, not bad. Have Seattle, reading a good book. Nice. All right, well, thank you for that. And keep popping those in the chat. We're going to keep going today and go over our agenda. So on the agenda today, we have our brief introduction, of course, to the Kentucky Advising Academy for those of you that this might be your first webinar you're attending. And then I'll turn it over to Heather Bushelman, and she'll be sharing some information on important ILP updates and their use in early career awareness. And at any time, if you have a question, please, as always, feel free to drop it in the chat. And we'll share those questions before we wrap up in our Q&A portion. And if we don't get them all answered during the webinar, we'll be sure to send you an email with your question answered. And then we're going to wrap up with some ways to connect with KAA, and then you'll give you that evaluation at the end, and that's how you'll receive your ELA credit if you need that for today. So first, the purpose of Kentucky Advising Academy. Many of you might have joined us before and have gotten to connect with you, so you kind of know what the purpose is. But for those, again, new people that might be joining us today, we want to make sure everyone knows that we exist to provide support to school counselors and all professional educators who find themselves in a position of any post-secondary advising role. So this could be school counselors, teachers, coaches, higher ed, admin or student affairs, Frisky coordinators, community partners, all of the above. And it's important for us to really expand on the idea of who counts as a post-secondary advisor, because we know that no one person can do it all on their own when it comes to helping our students navigate such a vital process. So the purpose of KAA is to develop professional learnings and resources in order to help build knowledge, capacity, and community around that post-secondary advising process. And we have multiple ways that practitioners can choose to be involved in our offerings and resources. Monthly, we offer our Well Advised, which is a brief podcast covering timely post-secondary topics, as well as our monthly webinar, just like the one you're in today. And those topics are usually related with the podcast, and it gives practitioners a chance to convene and gather ideas from each other in whichever way best suits their needs. And finally, we're also building a comprehensive advising toolkit, as well as sharing informational tips and spotlighted advising practices throughout the state. Some of you might have seen our toolkit at our recent professional learning series, but if you haven't, our toolkit will be launching in the next few weeks. So be sure you're on the lookout for that. To accomplish all of our offerings, We have our regional advising coordinators, myself, and then 3 of my team members, some of which are on this webinar with me today. And they help execute all of the structure and the resources that you've just seen me explain. And we would certainly love to have you join us in any and all those opportunities. And so you'll get information on how to stay connected with us at the end of our time together today. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guest for today. We have Heather Bushelman, Program Coordinator for Comprehensive School Counseling at the Kentucky Department of Education. So Heather, I'll pass it off to you and let you introduce yourself a bit more and then dive into today's topic.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. And I have to say kudos to you for calling counselors school counselors. So I really appreciate that's in your slides versus guidance, because we are getting away from that word nationwide and statewide. So thank you for that. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Heather Bushelman. I've been with KDE for a little over a year, about, 14 months now. But I oversee our school counseling programs across the state, but that also includes the minimum graduation requirements, the early graduation program, and of course the ILP. So I've kind of eclectic with all the different groups I get to meet with, but I've been a school counselor for 16 years, in education for 21. And then I got to help with the ILP when I had sixth graders in one of my buildings. So I've been where a lot of you are with implementing it and seeing the importance of it. And college and career readiness, I know, has always been a passion of mine, especially starting very young with our students. So, all right, well, we'll start diving in, Cheryl. Thank you. So when we think about the ILP, right now, statewide, I'm sure you're aware, it seems to have a very negative connotation attached to it. We did get rid of career cruising a few years ago. The funding went away. And so now you're seeing kind of some pros and some cons to what's been happening now that it's been implemented a little bit differently. And so we want to start getting back to the purpose of it, why are we doing it, and kind of debunking some myths, and then the new resources we are releasing that actually have been released about 2 months ago. So what is the ILP? So it's simply the plan to help students start thinking about their careers once they graduate. So that's why it starts in sixth grade. We want our kids to start at a very young age, figuring out who they are, what they're strong at, and start talking to adults and other mentors about what would they want to look at doing as they grow up, just to see all the options that are out there for post-secondary. And it does help them set academic and career-based learning goals for their academic and elective offerings. And so what that means is the ILP is supposed to be driving their high school schedules. And that's a lot of new in the past few years that people may not have realized, because that never really was the case before. But now that our schools have so many different options, CTE pathways, and just different types of classes students can take, their ILP is supposed to be driving that. So students can ask questions of, if I'm interested in this topic, what does my school offer that I could go for science and social studies? And if you've seen the updated minimum graduation requirements, it is a lot more flexible now of what types of classes are offered, as long as the Kentucky academic standards are taught. So there's a lot of individualization that's happening for our students right now. It is in mandate. So several years ago, there was a regulation created by our legislators that the ILP is supposed to be implemented for every student in every school. And it's also supposed to have student and parent feedback annually. So part of your implementation guide is getting that student voice and your family's feedback of, did they even know what it is? Do they know what the purpose of it? Especially your students, do they understand why they're doing it versus just check marking a box? And again, it does offer that individualized graduation pathway for every single student. Some of the components, so the districts have the autonomy to create your own guidance and policies for implementation. Some of our districts love that, some don't as much. They would rather have more specific just parameters of what that might look like, which is some of the updates that we have now released to help that process. The advisory program is implemented that includes mentors, community partnerships, and other students that help with the career exploration tasks. And all of it is based on social emotional learning. And we're going to talk about that in just a second, because we want to get away from the stigma with social emotional learning to what it truly means and what it is for our students. Okay, thank you. So some ILP myths. So it is not career cruising. Even when we had career cruising, that still technically was not the ILP. The purpose was to build that plan for our students so they had options going through high school, and just to see what all is out there. Career cruising was just logistically the platform, just like a lot of you have now. So if you've bought a platform for your district, that's your logistic piece to keep it organized, to keep your surveys, your interest inventories, maybe a resume, their schedules. So it's not career cruising. So when that went away, the ILP did not go away. It's more than a platform, like we're going to discuss just for a few minutes today. This is bigger than just getting on a computer and doing a 20-minute lesson once a month, once a semester. Again, it's more than a checkbox. If students, and of course they are telling us, they just have to get it done, they don't see the value in what they're doing. And so that's concerning, because we do want them to have voice in their schedules, and we want families to understand what are questions they need to be asking our schools of what offerings could their student take, as they progress through each grade level. And there is accountability. A lot of people are considering there's no accountability or meaning for completion, like who cares, why are we doing this? Superintendents do turn in a report every year to show the completion, and some of the data use. And so we can look at it and see what areas need to grow, who has platforms, who doesn't. And then we are starting school visits for districts. And so I know for me, that's exciting, because I get to go and see samples of ILPs just to see how's it going, but then how can we support our districts better as a whole state. Okay, so ILP connects to everything. And for your school counselors, these are the 3 domains they are experts in. They have to know everything about academics, SEL, and college and career readiness. So when your school counselors are such a big piece of this ILP implementation, this is why. Should they be the only one? No. It really should be a team of people leading this work to implement it. SEL is the backbone for career exploration. Everything our business community is telling us now about our students is, if you just Google employability skills, 90% of what pops up, they're SEL skills. And that has shifted in the past about 8 to 9 years. It's away from some of the academic based skills, because they're seeing our students have that. They had the technology skills, but they are lacking how to deal with conflict, time management, responsibility. How do they goal set? Can they get things done on time if they're given a task? So that's concerning, because we're wanting to do that at a young age, starting at kindergarten, but SEL has gotten a stigma behind it now. We want to make sure here in Kentucky, we understand this is SEL. It is not just feelings. It's not just coping skills. It is way beyond that. And so we want to ensure our students are learning that, and our adults who are implementing the ILP, that they are talking about that, because that's a bigger picture to this plan than just, oh, you have to do it, or it's a checkbox. We are building our students for the future. And so if we start young, we're talking about these different types of SEL skills that are in the playbooks, things like that. That's going to help our families start realizing, oh, well, goal setting is an SEL skill. versus it's just touchy feely and it's a bunch of, coping skills. It's so much bigger than that. But if we start teaching these skills in kindergarten, students are more likely to graduate from high school and college. They have stable full-time employment. They're less likely to commit crimes, be on public assistance, and they have less at-risk behavior and mental health issues. So the younger we can start doing this with our students, those statistics drastically decrease for those at-risk behaviors, and it increases our students' academic and college career success. Okay, so here are some of the updated documents. So the KDE site, which you're going to get all of these when we're finished, the KDE site has all the ILP resources on it. And you can access it through the comprehensive counseling website, or you could just Google it, KDE ILP. It'll come right up. The self-implementation rubric, if you've seen that before, it does have a guideline for districts, for schools, of what they could implement for the ILP. It's broad, but it does give some specifics of how to implement mentors for so many students, what types of family activities you might consider, and how to get parent input. Do you have a process for how this is done? Or are you rushing at the last minute to get 5 or 6 lessons finished by May? So that self-implementation rubric is great because it does help you almost self-assess. When we go into our schools, we're not coming in to score it and say, oh, you're not meeting this or meeting that. We want to see self-assess. How do you feel like you're doing? What's strong, but what do you need growth in? So the rubric will help your district and your school. And it also helps as a district start vertically aligning what you're doing with your students, even down to elementary for college career readiness. The ILP, of course, it has that in there, but think about as a district, what are we doing even starting in preschool through 12th grade to vertically align developmentally? How are we building our students to be ready when they graduate our school systems? The data center, that document just has some of the accountability and the data collection that does come to KDE from the district, from the superintendent, because they do have to sign off on it. And then the guidance document, that shows examples of platforms. So if your district is going to set aside a little bit of money to try to get some type of platform, that document has a list of several of them. And I know the ones I've got to meet with and see, they are willing to work with districts to make sure that it's affordable and that it's useful. They train, they help troubleshoot. And then of course, some districts will use Google, which is amazing. And that document also has information for the ILPA and the legislation and the guidance from KDE. So that document kind of tells you more of the law and the regs, but it also has all those resources for those platforms. And then the resource guide is one of the last ones. That just shows you the research behind the ILP and the nationwide implementation. This is not just something in Kentucky. Every state around the nation, they call it something different, but this is what everybody's been doing for actually several years. A lot of them are going through what we're going through right now, kind of revamping some documents, resources. And so that just kind of gives you a snapshot of why are we doing this? What's the research behind it? That might be useful to help if you do want to consider buying a platform for your district. That might be some good research to show to your superintendents, your board of education, to say, this is why we're doing this, and this is how it's going to help our students. And I know the next steps for us statewide is we are working on how to make this more equitable. We know that between districts, different funding is being used. And so we do have a committee that's working on some ideas to help make it more equitable. We're talking to different leaders about different types of funding, possibly a pilot. And of course, what they just mentioned about their toolkit coming out very soon. From the KAA mentioned, we are looking at that as a possible option for a platform, which would be free. So we are really trying to make sure districts have options if you do want to purchase a platform or use Google, that it is as easy as possible, so you don't have to recreate everything you're doing every single year. All right, so this is your stakeholders talking point document. This to me is where it starts. If you are implementing the ILP, it all starts with how you talk about it. If as an educator or a counselor, as an administrator, if I'm going into my school and looking at my staff and saying, we have to do this, it's every year, we have to do the monthly lessons, that's getting no buy-in from anybody. Nobody's going to care what we're doing, and they're not going to get the results you're wanting and the purpose. So it really starts with your implementation team. And again, this is bigger than your counselor. It shouldn't just be the counselor owning all this. It should be an administrator, counselor, a teacher, maybe a parent, a student, different types of stakeholders to consider. How would this look if we implemented it with fidelity and got the buy-in? These talking points will help you do that. So you see the educator box, that tells your educators this is why they're doing that. So even if you're a social studies teacher and you have to help out with having some kids do some of the lessons or activities, this is why they're doing it. It's not a checkbox. It's not that you have to, but are they having conversations with your students? Even if it's just a few seconds, like, oh, I noticed you picked this, or I noticed you chose this for the solution to this problem, whatever it is you're doing. And then you have your students. So the students need to understand, why are they doing this versus just clicking buttons. They need to have a voice in their education. And so we want to encourage them to ask questions of, for example, if they love animal science, asking their educators and their counselors, what does our school offer as a class pathway or course pathway that I could do, to maybe look at that as an option? And then your families really need to be aware what is in the ILPs and the purpose. And they should be asking questions, because I know a lot of the ILP activities mention trying to find scholarship opportunities, financial, different literacy, things like that. So your families need to know that the students are trying to help look at that, and they can share that back with their families. And so using these talking points, I hope will help you implement it with better buy-in, and with some fidelity, just to get the purpose more of what it's supposed to be, versus, again, it's bigger than a platform. It's bigger than just clicking boxes. And on our updated playbooks, you are going to see this visual on all of them. This is from CASEL, and actually CASEL has seen the National Organization for SEL. They have seen our playbooks, and they have been helping in some of the process of updating this. And they are amazing to work with. But your playbooks give you a sample, timelines. It gives you activities for starting at elementary all the way through high school. So every single grade level, you have sample activities that you could use. There's videos, there's books that you might consider, there's project-based learning, there's collaborations between stakeholders, business partners, mentors, guest speakers. So as you look at the playbooks, there will be different things that you will love and you will like, and some that you may not can use every single year, and that's okay. But we wanted to release these so you don't just have to start from scratch. Everything's there, and it's compliant with the ILP. It's just figuring out, okay, so now how do we implement it as a school and as a district? The elementary playbook, like I said, is now added. It's a brand new one. It starts in kindergarten. And the reason we added that was because, I know I came from elementary, and that seems to be the hardest area to get some college career readiness besides a career day. And if we really want to prepare our kids for the future, we've got to start young, talking about these skills bigger than just what do I want to be when I grow up? What problems do they want to solve in their city, in their school, in their world that could lead to a career? And of course, the middle school and high school, those activities have been updated. So you'll see some new things in there as well. I think the biggest thing that I know people have really started to like in these playbooks are the timelines. We have now created a sample timeline for every 9 weeks or just annually for you to consider implementing for your ILP. So it's not a checklist, but it gives you a sample of, in the first 9 weeks, these are some activities I might want to implement. The second 9 weeks, these are things I want to implement. And every grade level is different. That starts at 6th grade when our ILP, of course, starts. So check those out, because that might be something, if your district is wanting something more specific, that will really help you navigate how to space out completing your ILP for all your students. Okay, so like I mentioned, there's the timelines, and they are within the playbooks. So if you go to, for example, 7th grade and you read through the different activities, there are links that you can open up to click on. There's a spreadsheet, and there's also a Google Doc that you can open up, and you can force copy those and use them as needed, just to guide your work when you're implementing this. The best practices document, we just created that about a month ago, as now we're getting to visit schools, because, and it's not a punitive score or anything like that, but it's helping us at the state level. If I'm looking at a holistic ILP, these are things we should be seeing. And of course, it's like resumes, it's their schedule, it's extracurricular activities, interest inventories. So it's all those things we know should be in the ILP, but now it's on one document. And so what that does is this will help you to see, you could use this even as your own self-assessment. Like, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? And then what can we grow on in that document? And it does have some sample SEL activities that are all college career based. But that will help you to look at, I know some schools have even created that document, and every student is self-assessing some of their ILP implementation themselves. And they're looking at, okay, it's December, here's where I'm at. I have 3 more activities I need to complete by May. So there's different ways to do that, but it's a great tracker just to see how students are completing your items. Overall, it could be used again for your specific implementation, just as a snapshot to see what you're doing. And again, we're using this during our school visits. So when we pull our samples, we get to connect it to that to see, oh, okay, we've got, this is going well, but this is where they need some more support as we're visiting our schools. Okay, so next steps. So again, this is a very quick snapshot. So review the updated documents and determine what you could implement next year. This is not going to be an overnight change. Nothing ever is. But to me, I think the first step, if you're wanting to kind of revamp your ILP, is getting a team together who is engaged in making sure they get buy-in in your buildings. That's the biggest thing. I think understanding that stakeholder document, what is the purpose? Why are we doing this? What type of buy-in is needed for your staff, students, and families based on the information today? I know just with some of the schools I've worked with, most of our stakeholders don't know any of the information we've talked about today. And so that's one of the concerns. So how do we make that better? And hopefully that document that we've released will help about those talking points. And just getting that out there so people understand, oh, this is not career cruising anymore. This is not just a checkbox. This is something that's supposed to be meaningful for our students. And then, of course, using the rubric and best practices document, self-assess your district, see how you're doing. It won't take long, and if you need to, pull some sample ILPs, meet together maybe as a middle and high school team, even maybe throw in some elementary to say, these are some ILPs, this is where we are, what can we do better? Or what do we need more support in? And then trainings are going to take place throughout the next school year. I'm working with the regional cooperatives, and we're going to create some schedules virtually, some may be in person, to have some trainings to really dive into these documents and to give you time to start building your implementation. I think is the biggest thing, is just having time to do it. So that's in the works right now, and those schedules will be released very soon. And I think the biggest thing to consider when we do our trainings is we are encouraging a team. It will not just be the school counselor comes, it will be a team of people being encouraged to come and attend that will help implement it.
Well, thank you, Heather. That was chock full of information.
Mhm.
We know that we just went over a lot in a little time. And so we wanted to be able, like we mentioned at the beginning, to open the floor for questions. And you'd be able to ask Heather directly. So feel free to use any emoji options to like raise your hand or just come off mute and introduce yourself and follow up with their questions. We've also been monitoring the chat in case anybody popped a question in there. So feel free to throw a question in the chat now. But to get us started, does anyone have any questions?
I wanted to say I'm with the WKEC in far western, in Western Kentucky. We're West Kentucky Educational Cooperative. A few years ago, we worked with a programmer who graduated from Murray State University and was from one of our schools, and we created Tassel Pathway. And that is, we wrote it into the Gear Up grant, and that's what we've been using. The developer changes it as the counselors want different things. We use the resources that we had from Katie at the time. You've done a wonderful job expanding those resources, and I can't wait to share those with the entire group that we have. But about 15 of the 26 schools use that. So I'm sending you an email to connect you so you can get a demonstration of that before you come, so you have a idea of what it is. And so you don't just walk in, because everyone's familiar with it. So I want you to be familiar with it. So I'm sending you an email for that. And we've been real pleased with that product. We've negotiated a co-op price, which I strongly encourage people to do if they do have vendors, because we get it for half price, which makes it affordable. So we look forward to you coming, and I'm sending you my information, and we look forward to you coming to Western Kentucky. Thank you for this. It was really, really good.
Thank you. Yeah, Diane, when you send me your email, would you mind to just put some information about how your co-op was able to fund that pricing for some of those districts, and to get that price for those districts? Because I know that's the biggest question a lot of times I do get, is just is funding. So any information you have about how you were able to do that, I think would be very helpful too, as we start the trainings to help co-ops and districts just maybe collaboratively work together. So if you could provide me some of that, that'd be great.
Well, I'm the grant writer, so we write it into the grants. We've written it into we wrote it into the Gear Up, and that's where we developed it. I'm also the director of a foundation, and so we assist in that way. But I'll give you ideas.
Okay, thank you.
Heather, I know everyone will get the PowerPoint, which does have the links, but since we have a little bit of extra time, would it be too much trouble to ask that you all like show a couple of those resources just while we're here together? And I'm not sure if you want to show the playbook or if you want to show something else, but I just thought it might be great to see like a visual.
Okay. Yeah, we can show, we'll start with the playbook, because I think because the timelines in those are usually the biggest thing people are asking for. So, okay.
Which one would you like to share, Heather?
We can start with, I tell you what, let's do the elementary, and then we can switch to the middle school, because the elementary is brand new, just so they get a glimpse of that. So we can do those two.
Okay, I'll pull it up for us.
Thank you.
No problem.
And then after those couple, we can show that best practices document. I know that's a big one people are asking for as well. That'll be helpful.
Thank you. And if you all
after the elementary playbook, the best practice.
Yeah, we'll do the elementary playbook, we'll do the middle school one, and then let's do the best practices. We'll do those three. Yeah.
And you all keep those questions coming for Heather. As you can tell, she's got a wealth of knowledge, and there's tons of new information. So drop those questions in the chat, or just come off mute and ask.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So this is the brand new elementary playbook. And so towards the top, as she's scrolling down, you can kind of see this is kind of how we developed it. And, it's based off, Eric Erickson's stages of development. There you'll see that SEL workforce development framework. And we provide a link for that. And we did have a lot of people, I don't know, on my committee within KDE from our CTE team working with this as well, because they've just released a CTE crosswalk with social emotional learning that is in our playbooks as well. So as you scroll down, that just kind of gives you a glimpse of why we developed it the way we did. And of course, there's our Kentucky academic standards, financial literacy resources. You can kind of see the continuum, K through 3, intermediate. Again, it's just kind of the why. And the Kentucky career studies, those are some great things just to keep in mind as elementary schools try to implement career readiness, because it is bigger than a career day, and it's bigger than just what do you want to be when you grow up. So those standards really help that. There are some CTE basics to start considering even in elementary school, just to say, hey, here's some pathways. Here are the different career clusters. Okay, you keep scrolling down. And there's kind of some different stakeholders, and in elementary schools, what they could do to help, implement some of these things. Of course, the school counselor, we do a lot. But the teachers are already, I'm sure they're already doing things. They may not be calling it college career readiness, but they are. Your librarians, your Frisky coordinators. Okay, then keep going. Yeah, there's just some more of the why behind it. We want to make sure, of course, it's equitable. And then here's where your actual lessons, activities, project-based learning ideas start. So in kindergarten, these are the questions, typical kindergartners, are developmentally ready for. What's the difference between a job and a career? What types of tools and uniforms and tasks do they use in these careers? What is their responsibility? We want to start thinking about, what am I strong at when I'm responsible, doing chores at home, keeping my items organized at school, turning in work on time? How have they learned skills independently? And how do they become a member of a digital community? You will see that in every playbook now. We wanted to add something about how to be appropriate online as a digital citizen. So when you get to the middle and high school playbooks, you will see a lot of different ideas and sites and lessons about teaching our students, what does that look like to have a relationship online with your friends, as you're emailing, any of those websites, because that's going to be, that's a huge skill right now for them to know, is how does that look? There's interest inventories. We've given you several different examples of those. There's some project-based learning ideas. And of course, for your teachers, how to plan field trips, but also how to talk about your field trips, to make it more purposeful, tying it to college career versus just we're going on the fun field trip. Because a lot of what we do, especially in elementary, is just making it meaningful. Is, anytime you can tie in college career readiness with the activity you're doing of, oh, what is this career? What are they doing? What problem are they solving as a mechanic or as a lawyer, whatever it may be. And then there's some career goals. So that's just a snapshot, so you can see every grade level, we have provided some ideas to use. Okay, and if you want to switch over to the middle school one, I want to show a couple of those timelines that they have.
Moving over to the next one.
Thank you.
No problem.
This is always, I think, the biggest, I want the timelines. That's what I've been told for 2 months now. So I want to make sure you get to see that today. Okay, so again, you can see it looks similar to the elementary. And if you'll just keep scrolling down, we'll just look at 6th grade. So yeah, see, it's just kind of similar. So no big surprises. Okay, so so this is your 6th grade, and this is where your timelines will start. So if you'll keep scrolling, Cheryl, just a little bit further, they're right at the bottom of every grade level's strand. Let's see, there they are right there. Okay, so 6th grade through 12th grade, you have completion timelines. They are in Word, and there's also a spreadsheet option. When we were doing this with our committee, some of them in the schools mentioned they wanted the spreadsheet option because they were going to have every student have a tab on a spreadsheet to be able to mark when they complete that part of the timeline. So Cheryl, if you want to click on, I don't know if you can though, if you want to click on either the annual or the quarterly, you can just pick one. It doesn't matter. It
The
might
spreadsheet or Word?
do the spreadsheet. That's fine. Okay, yeah. And of course, it's going to make you force copy. So go ahead and make a copy. Okay. So this is your quarterly timeline. So you can kind of see what this does is this kind of will break it into, now if you're a trimester school, you could break this into trimesters. But you can kind of see over to the side, there's different activities to consider for the 6th graders. The All About Me, exploring their interest survey. And of course, we've not, giving you strict, this is what you have to use. But how do they explore a career and interest survey? What interest inventory are you giving to them? If you're using a platform, obviously that's going to have it in there. Classes to take. How do they know what classes to take? Extracurricular activities. So you can see if you were to have as a mentor, let's say you have 25 kids. Some of our committee members were saying they could do a different tab for each student. And so that way their students could get access to their tab and type in different notes themselves. Or they may do that as well as a mentor as they meet with the student, because again, we want to encourage that relationship, talking to your students about the ILPs. So this is just a sample timeline just to consider. A lot of our schools are starting to use this as not going back to career cruising where it's so step by step, but this is an option for those of you who do like the more specific implementation. So okay, and then we'll show the best practices document. So I created this right at about 2 months ago. As we were starting to visit schools, we needed something to kind of keep track of what are they doing great at, what support do they need. So we came up with these different competencies. And if I don't know if you can see them, but each competency that's in gray, like 1, competency 2, those are all social emotional skills. Every one of them. Responsible decision making, strengths and self-efficacy. But again, we want to get away from that SEL stigma of why are we teaching it? This is why. It's going to help our students be ready when they graduate and they go off and get careers or college or military, whatever their plans are. So we've broken it down into the different strands of like responsible decision making. For example, you see problem solving, financial literacy. And like Cheryl is clicking on, if you click on one of those arrows over there, Cheryl, that can kind of tell you it's not in place, it's progressing, or it's evident. So if I'm in a school and I want to see where I'm at with my ILPs, I might pull some samples just randomly and just self-assess it and just see where am I at with my 11th graders, my 10th graders, because we know this is not based by grade level. This best practices document is just overall. So from 6th to 12th grade, this is what they need to have. So again, they're not going to probably look at scholarships in 6th grade or 7th grade just yet. So that would be something, you might want to have an option of maybe NA, not applicable yet. But again, we want to provide you with, if we get to come see your district, this is what we'll use. And this is how we'll figure out what are your next steps that you need support with. Is it coaching? Is it getting a team together to implement it better? So is it how to use the playbooks, just whatever it is. So that's now going to be, it's already released. So you have that just as an option. And you can see it talks about right there. It's academic, SEL, college career readiness. So, but you're going to have the link for that as well.
Yeah, I think Trinity was popping some of these links in the chat, but also like it was mentioned, you'll get a copy of this presentation as well as after completing the evaluation, when we send out those ELA certificates, they'll also be linked in that communication. So there's multiple ways you'll be able to have access to all of this information. Do we have any final questions before we keep going on? Like there's so much information, it's hard to have just like one question. All right, I'm going to share our PowerPoint again. Well, thank you, Heather, for all of that really lucrative and beneficial information. I'm excited that we got to, have a little bit of your expertise and brain with us all today, and just getting to share those links and knowing that they're out there, is largely important. And I'm glad that we have this platform to share that. Heather, do you have anything final you'd like to say before we wrap up our session?
I don't think so. Just I appreciate you all having me on, and of course you can email me if you have questions before our trainings begin. But I think the biggest thing probably moving forward is just thinking about what does your implementation look like, and what are some growth areas, and start small. Again, it's not an overnight change. So, and I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Thank you so much. So as we near the end of our time together, I briefly, again, want to encourage you to stay connected with the Kentucky Advising Academy and be sure to be on the lookout for our April webinar. Registration is now available and open. You can access registration through the QR code here. You'll also be able to access it on the CPE-KAA website, which we'll share in just a few slides. And April's topic is on elevating post-secondary partnerships with the Kentucky Fame. So we'll be speaking with a few of our Kentucky Fame representatives on those offerings that exist across the state. From our website, which is being sent in the chat, you can subscribe to all of our communications, including updates about our podcast, webinars, as well as emails regarding any of our in-person professional learning events. And you can always follow us on social media as well, where we post about a lot of this stuff, and that is at Advising Kentucky. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we're also on YouTube, which is where we post our webinars after the fact. So in case anyone has missed it today and wants to catch up, or has missed any of our previous webinars, you can always find us on YouTube and those past offerings by searching Kentucky Advising Academy. And last but not least, we do ask you to please complete our evaluation. It can be accessed right here through the QR code, as well as the link you see on the screen. It is a Google form, and we ask that you fill that out for us, just so we have a way to continue to improve the Kentucky Advising Academy, our offerings, and the resources that we provide you, our post-secondary advisors that we are here to serve. This is also how we process your ELA credit. So please take the time right now to scan the QR code or use the link on the screen to complete the form for us. The link is also being added in the chat if you'd like to access it there. And again, we'll use this form to email you your certificate of participation, as well as today's PowerPoint presentation and all of those links that Heather just went over. So even if you don't need that ELA credit, please give us that evaluation to help continue our work. And make sure you get those really important documents that Heather shared with us today. As always, we hope to see you at future events, and thank you so much for participating today. And I hope everyone has a great day.